Good evening, friends. Let us be still a moment. There is a presence here within and all around, and it is enough. Before you give up on spirituality, you need to know what Joel S. Goldsmith experienced. He did not begin as a mystic. He was an ordinary man who met an invisible that proved itself in the visible. Healing, guiding, supplying, when human methods had reached their end. In the silence, without ritual or argument, a gentle assurance arose. I am here. From that moment he discovered there is one presence, one power. That grace is not a promise but an activity revealed when we turn within and consent to be still. You've tried books, methods, techniques. For now, set them down. Breathe, be still. Let the inner voice announce itself as it did for him, on an ordinary day, in an ordinary room, in an extraordinary silence. If this stirs something in you, like the video, comment one lovin' to affirm one presence, and subscribe so we can sit in this awareness together. Because in the next few minutes, I'll share the moment that dissolved Joel's doubt and opened the door to the infinite way. What came in that silence, and why it may be about to come to you. Ready to step into that stillness. So we begin in stillness, because that is where Joel learned that the invisible makes itself known, not by storm but by a quiet certainty. He would ask us to close the door of thought and shut out both fear and desire and sit in the interior sanctuary where no one else can enter. Not a sanctuary of place, but of awareness. It is the simple willingness to cease managing life for a few breaths and to let life declare itself. No formulas, no persuading God, no spiritual machinery. Just a soft, unhurried resting in the fact of presence. In this pause, you do nothing to attract God, for God is not coming from afar. Presence is already the withinness of your very being, the life that looks through your eyes and beats your heart. Acknowledgement is not a sentence you say. It is the turning of attention from the circumference to the center. You might notice the breath, the quiet pulse in the hands, the space between sounds. Let the mind set down its clipboards and clip its wings. If a thought insists, smile at it as you would at a child, and let it play outside while you sit with the one who needs no words. To acknowledge the presence is to consent to be a beholder. You are not trying to make harmony happen. You are standing still to witness harmony revealing itself. This is the secret thread in Joel's teaching, or the activity of grace is already present, and our task is receptivity. So we become listeners. Perhaps you silently say once, "Here I am," and then you stop saying. You listen, not with ears, but with that interior sense by which you know you are aware. Awareness attending to awareness becomes prayer without words. And because we have blamed ourselves for not being spiritual enough, we think stillness is a performance. It is not. It is the cessation of performance. Lay down the measuring, the spiritual report cards, the anxious inspection of results. Goldsmith would sit in a chair and simply wait for the inner click, that shift from personal effort to presence. Sometimes it came quickly, sometimes after long minutes of quiet. But when it came, all sense of a separate self relaxed, and a peace that needed no proof filled the room. In your own sitting, let it be that simple. Close the eyes if you like. Feel the ground receive your weight. Let the breath lengthen without forcing it. Then turn, almost as a leaf turns toward light, toward the center. There is a gentle luminosity there, a witness to your thoughts that is not a thought. Rest as that witness. If you find yourself chasing experiences, remember that presence is not an experience, but the context of all experiences. It is the I that says I am before any story begins. Stay with that, tenderly, like holding a quiet friend's hand, and notice how, without your management, a hush gathers, and with it, a sense that something faithful, intelligent, and intimate is here. Not outside or above, but as the very core of you, nearer than breath, quietly declaring itself without fanfare, until even your questions grow hushed, and you find yourself listening for that inward assurance that does not argue, yet cannot be denied. And then, as Joel testified, there came a moment when the hush crystallized into a simple, living assurance. I am here. It was not a sentence arriving from elsewhere, but a presence knowing itself at the center of his awareness. No trumpet, no angel, no psychical drama, just authority without force, tenderness without sentiment, a clarity that left nothing to argue. He recognized the I of that sentence was not the personal that worries and tries. It was the timeless I that simply is, the same I that spoke through prophets and poets, the I that preceded the body and outlives the last breath. In its light, fear had no footing. Need and problem looked like shadows cast by a concept of separation. He had been seeking help, answers, techniques. That simple presence erased the seeking. Not that his human affairs dissolved into a dream overnight, but the center from which he lived changed. Prayer ceased being petition and became recognition, a silent yes to what already is. When he says, I am here, it is not reassurance for the anxious personality. It is the disclosure that being is present as your very awareness. You discover you are not a separated one trying to reach God. You are the place where God is being God. From that turning, healings followed not as demonstrations of will, but as the natural outflow of realized presence. People came with pain, with lack, with fear, and in the stillness of that assurance things righted themselves. Not because a man possessed mysterious powers, but because, in the consciousness of one presence, the belief in two powers could not stand. The current of grace, unresisted, did its own work. That inner word was not a command, it was a revelation of fact. It did not argue theology, it ended argument by revealing a state. In that state, the sense of personal doer faded and life became witnessing. Watching as love, already present, arranged what the mind could not arrange. Sometimes the assurance came as a felt presence, sometimes as quiet joy, sometimes as an inner stillness that seemed to know before thought. He learned to wait for it as a sailor waits for wind, not to manufacture it, but to set the sail of attention and let the breath move. That waiting was not passivity. It was alert communion, a poised listening that honored the reality more than the appearance. And this is the turning for us as well. The moment you hear, even faintly, I am here, notice what relaxes in you. The compulsion to fix, to defend, to improve loosens its grip. The heart recognizes home without an address. You begin to trust the invisible cause more than the visible consequence, and life reorders by that trust. To abide in that assurance, you do not repeat words. You rest as the awareness that hears them. If thought asks, how will this pay the rent, heal the body, mend the relationship? You return to the fact. Presence is here. From presence, wisdom unfolds as the next right step, and often without your knowing how the knot untees. Let the phrase echo without echoing, felt more than repeated. It is not a magic charm, it is being naming itself, and your task is to be present to the naming. From that recognition, another clarity dawns. If that which says I is here, there are not two powers contending for your life. One presence, one power means exactly that. Omnipresence leaves no other presence, omnipotence leaves no other power, omniscience leaves no separate mind to oppose or improve God. The fear that has lived in the nervous system fed on the belief that something, out there, could stand apart from the infinite and act on its own. In the light of I, that belief loosens. What looked like an enemy begins to thin into an appearance without authority. Joel called this the end of two powers. Not God and disease, God and lack, God and conflict. Only God, and the shadow, plays that arise from a world hypnotized by separation. This is not denial, it is discernment. When a rope is mistaken for a snake at dusk, or the body leaps and the heart races, then the porch light clicks on and you see a rope. You do not kill a snake, you see through an appearance. So in practice, we are not fighting conditions, improving them, or pleading for a stronger dose of good. We are letting the light show us what is, until the supposed second power stands revealed as no power. This changes prayer. Instead of arming yourself for battle, you return to beholding. Resist not evil, becomes intelligible, do not lend reality to what has none. The moment you accept two powers, you step into fear's jurisdiction. The moment you stand in one, fear cannot find leverage. That is why, in the awareness of one presence, healing often occurs as a byproduct of seeing. The activity of grace is not a counterforce, it is the revelation that only God is acting. In daily life, this means you stop bargaining with ultimatums. A bill arrives, a harsh word is spoken, a report frightens you. The old reflex surges: fix, defend, brace, pause, return to the center, and acknowledge presence is the only presence here. Power is the only power here. Intelligence is the only mind here. Sit with that, not as a mantra to manipulate events, but as a recognition of fact. Often, from that recognition, a simple next step surfaces: a call, an email, a rest, and it carries a quiet authority. Other times, nothing is asked but continued abiding, when conditions rearrange in ways the fearful mind could not have designed. You begin to notice that fear is not a message from reality, but a vibration from the belief in separateness. You do not shame it, you do not indulge it. You let it pass through the openness of awareness, like wind through a grove, while you remain with the fact of one. This is the meaning of spiritual safety, not fences and locks, but transparency to love. The arm of flesh, with its postures and defenses, yields to the ease of spirit doing its own work. Because one presence is universal, it does not confer private advantage. The good that appears is not my good, against their good, but wholeness recognized where division seemed to be. Relationships soften because the need to dominate or withdraw loses its rationale. Supply becomes sufficiency because the terror of scarcity is not being fed. Health shows up as order because the mind is not energizing an opposite law. None of this is accomplished by will. It is the natural outcome of living from the conviction that there is no second power to fear, propitiate, or overcome, only the ceaseless, quiet activity of the one revealing itself as the substance and law of all that is. This ceaseless activity is what Joel called grace, the living action of the one, functioning without our pushing or pleading. Grace is not a current we summon. It is the rhythm of reality revealing itself when resistance quiets. To enter that rhythm, we do not brace or bargain, we soften into beholding. The moment we drop voluntarism, the presence we acknowledge begins to show its own sufficiency in ways the mind could not script. Joel's watchword was, "I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doth the works." That is not piety, it is mechanics. Will belongs to the belief in separation. I, a private mind, must move the universe. Witness belongs to the truth of one. I rest as transparency while the one shows forth its nature. In practice, this means we stop trying to use truth as a tool to get results and allow truth to use us as a window for its appearing. You notice it in the small and the ordinary. Before the email is sent, before the call is made, you pause for that inner click where effort gives way to ease. Then the words come clean, the timing is right, or the tone carries peace. You did not manufacture effectiveness, you rode a current already moving. Guidance proves itself by the absence of strain and the presence of a quiet rightness that needs no defense. When pain or fear presents, the reflex is to fix. Grace invites a different posture, impersonalize the appearance and return to the center. Sit, acknowledge one presence, and wait without outlining. Often, a soft shift occurs. The sense of a separate patient and a separate problem dissolves, and with it the compulsion to manipulate conditions. From that beholding, adjustments happen on their own axis, a thought to rest, an intuition to seek help, a gentle warmth in the body, an unexpected assistance at the door. Do not outline was Joel's safeguard. Will outlines witness receives. The mind loves plans and formulas, but grace is creative, not repetitive. What healed yesterday may not appear today, because grace does not work by precedent, it works by being. Our part is fidelity to the presence, not loyalty to methods. We show up, wait, recognize, and refrain from turning recognition into a technique. Think of a seed. No gardener pulls on shoots to hurry them, he removes the stones. waters and lets life do what life does. So here we remove the stones of fear and the weeds of personal will. We water with quiet attention, and we let the inner life express in its own season. Grace does not rearrange matter to suit our preferences. It reveals the spiritual fact that was veiled by anxiety, and the outer picture yields as it must. A mark of grace functioning is normalcy that feels holy. Conversations soften without rehearsals. Supply arrives without drama. What the body finds order without coercion. You look back and cannot take credit. You can only nod at the unobtrusive intelligence that threaded the day. Gratitude arises, not to a capricious favor, but to the reliability of a presence that never left. Waiting for grace is not passivity, it is active trust. You remain alert, but uninsistent. If emotion surges or thoughts argue, you let them pass through the open sky of awareness and refuse the bait to do something from fear. If words of truth come, you let them be for your own remembrance, not as a wand waved at conditions. You sit until the sense of personal agenda loosens and the quiet assurance returns, and then you watch how life, needing no push, proceeds to be itself through the very place you stand. Now the shift deepens from managing to making room. This is the pivot from methods to receptivity, turning within not as a tactic but as a homecoming. Methods promise leverage. If you say this, visualize that, fast for 3 days, you may persuade reality to answer. Receptivity knows reality is already answering. Your part is to grow quiet enough to notice. Joel called it practicing the presence, which is less practice than remembering. The letter of truth can point, only the spirit gives life. When you turn within, you shut the door, not to the world you love, but to the inner noise that pretends to run it. You close the door of sense, you enter the closet of awareness, and you wait without outline. You are not emptying a room so a guest can arrive. You are discovering the guest is host, house, and inhabitant already. Silence is not a technique, it is the atmosphere in which what is true becomes self-evident. Receptivity has a feel unhurried, alert, undefended. You notice the breath, the soft hum under thought, the simple fact that you are aware. You let the mind's hands unclench. If phrases of truth arise, let them be raindrops, not hammers. If no words come, do not manufacture them. The measure is not intensity, it is the ease with which effort falls away. In the midst of the day, receptivity appears as small turnings. Before you knock on an office door, pause and acknowledge the one presence there. On the freeway, in a line, in a kitchen, let attention sink a few inches inward until you feel the gentle anonymity of being the witness. If tension surges, do not fix it. Consent to be transparent to it. You are not trying to change an outer scene. You are letting the inner fact change how the scene appears. Methods seek control. Receptivity welcomes revelation. Methods aim at effects. Receptivity abides in cause. Joel warned against mental argument, piling affirmations against appearances. He would sometimes begin with a statement to orient awareness, then fall quiet until the click came. The statement wasn't the power. It was the finger pointing to the moon. The power was the presence recognized, the wordless knowing that makes argument unnecessary. Take no thought was his safeguard against turning truth into willpower. Discipline helps but does not harden. Many brief returns to the within throughout the day ripen consciousness more than a single heroic sitting laced with effort. Let the clock ring not as an alarm, but as a bell of the monastery you carry everywhere. Morning, noon, evening, and in the night, if you wake, lean back into the inner seat, offer the simple acknowledgement and wait. Do not time the ocean, notice the tide. You will unlearn appetites along the way, the itch for phenomena, the chase for visions, the hunger for approval for being spiritual. Receptivity is shy, it prefers secrecy. Keep sacred things unadvertised. Let guidance prove itself by the peace it brings and the fruit it bears. If the mind asks for results, remind it that demonstration is grace's business, yours is consent. You are becoming more available than active, more listening than declaring, more door than doer. and in that availability the inner teacher finds you prepared for the next unfolding. Consent is the simple, unclenched yes that completes receptivity. It is not giving permission to God. No such permission is needed, but withdrawing the subtle resistances by which the personal self tries to supervise the infinite. Consent says, I will not run ahead with plans, I will not lag behind with doubt, I stand open. It is a posture more than a phrase, a willingness to be transparent so that what already is can show itself without our edits. You feel consent in the body as an easing of the grip. The jaw softens, the breath lengthens, the eyes unfocus from urgency. Inside, the watcher steps a half pace back and lets the field widen. If words are helpful, they are few. Yes, here I am, thy will be done, not as resignation but as alignment, the will of wholeness revealing wholeness. Consent is not passivity. It is poised cooperation with the rhythm of grace, a readiness to be moved rather than a resolve to move things. Let it reveal itself now is the heart of this posture. Not later, when conditions improve, not after you've mastered a curriculum. Now, because presence is not on lie-away. Now does not mean hurried, it means timeless. It is the fresh instant beneath clock, time where being is forever new. When the mind defers revelation to a brighter future, it is hiding its fear. Consent dismantles that postponement. It faces this breath, this room, this task, and yields the rein so that the inner order can disclose itself here. Revelation often arrives without spectacle. It may be a shift of tone before a difficult conversation, a quiet certainty to wait when the urge is to push, an unaccountable warmth in the heart that melts a grievance, a practical idea that solves what anxiety could not. Sometimes it is restraint. Do not speak, do not send, do not move yet. At other times it is courage, make the call, ask the question, step forward. The test is peace. Consent does not drag you through drama, it carries you with a rightness that requires no argument. To consent is to accept not knowing as holy ground. The personal mind wants a map before it walks. Presence reveals step by step. You do not mortgage the present to secure an imaginary future. You take the step given, and the path appears underfoot. This cultivates a new confidence, not in outcomes, but in the reliability of the inner to guide the outer. Fear recedes because it has fewer what-ifs to feed on when your attention abides in what is. Consent also means you allow yourself to be changed. The presence does not merely adjust circumstances, it renovates consciousness. It may loosen identities you've cherished. The fixer, the martyr, the controller, so that a truer simplicity can live. It may dissolve appetites that once felt necessary. It may ask forgiveness where pride preferred distance. None of this is violence, it is the gentle reordering that happens when light enters a cluttered room and you suddenly see what no longer belongs. In relationships, consent appears as soft eyes and unclenched listening. You stop rehearsing replies and allow the meeting to be a place where the one meets itself. In work, it shows up as integrity without strain, doing what is yours to do, leaving what is not. In pressure, it is the pause that refuses panic its throne and remembers the center. Consent does not promise an unbroken blue sky, it promises a sky spacious enough for every weather without losing its clarity. Make a practice of brief, sincere yieldings throughout the day. Before opening an email, a door, a conversation open within. Offer the small yes and wait a breath. If nothing is felt, trust the silence. If a word of truth comes, let it be for recognition, not manipulation. If an impulse to act arises with quiet authority, follow it and release the outcome. If only stillness remains, keep company with it as you move. Letting the inner pace set the outer step,